Before we get into today's interview, I want to tell you about another podcast that I think you're really going to love. It's called the Marketing Book Podcast, and it was named by LinkedIn as one of 10 podcasts that will make you a better marketer. It's hosted by my friend Douglas Burdett, who we've had on the podcast in the past. And Douglas does weekly interviews with authors of best-selling marketing and sales books. According to an Adobe survey of marketers, 76% of them said that marketing has changed more in the last 2 years than in the previous 50. So when you subscribe to this podcast, the Marketing Book Podcast, you're going to be able to keep up with the quickly changing landscape of modern marketing and sales. One thing that is unique about this that I think is really interesting is that Douglas reads every single book before every interview. And you can tell that in the engagement that he is able to have with each of the authors that he interviews. You can just tell he knows this content because he's read the entire book. He hasn't just read the cliff notes. And so he has done over 100 interviews. I think they're at episode 134 right now. By the time you're hearing this, they might be at 135. But I want you to head over. You're already in the podcast app. Head over and search for the Marketing Book Podcast. Get subscribed. Download a few episodes. You can check out their website at marketingbookpodcast.com. You can follow them on Twitter at Marketing Book, but I really, really, really want you to subscribe to this podcast. This is one that I get a ton of value from, and I think you will as well.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm Jonathan Green.
And I'm James Carberry.
Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We are here today with Adam Kleinberg. He is the co-founder and CEO of Traction. Adam, how you doing today, man?
Great. Thanks for having me.
So, Adam, we're going to be talking about why B2B marketers need to think like B2C marketers. This is something I am very aligned with you on. But before we get into the topic, I'd love for you to explain to our listeners, what is Traction? What are you guys doing over there?
So Traction is a digitally focused full-service creative agency in San Francisco that's really good at uncovering insights about customers and aligning them to the work that we create for brands. And we do that through branding, advertising, content, and digital experiences. We were named in 2016 by the Business Marketing Association, one of the top 3 small agencies, which they defined as under 25 million in revenue in the United States. So we have a lot of experience with B2B as well as consumer, but some of our clients include Apple, Lenovo, SAP, Intuit, Intel, Dolby.
Love it. So you're working with a lot of B2B brands.
It's a few of the brands that we've had the good fortune to help.
Love it. All right, Adam. So I want to dive into the meat of what we're going to be talking about today. And as we were talking about it offline, one of the first things that you brought up was this idea of talking to people like they're people. So as we're thinking about why B2B marketers need to think like B2C marketers, why is this idea kind of the first thing that pops into your head that we need to be talking to people like they're people?
I think when I talk about why Traction exists and why we have the approach that we do and why we focus so hard on really uncovering insight about customers, because across the board in advertising today, in marketing, consumers are actively ignoring marketing. They're tuning it out. Not only are they, inundated with messages and across just a whole host of devices, they are actively installing ad blockers, skipping ads on TV, switching to streaming options for how they consume television.
Yep. So
in order to break through, marketers need to think about creating marketing that people actually want to consume.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. If you don't bring it today, people are just going to tune you out.
Yeah.
So we're really focused on creating that. And, sometimes that's creating utility or value in some functional way. Sometimes that's creating content that's engaging and entertaining. We had a campaign we developed. Robert Half International is one of the leading staffing firms globally, and their biggest subdivision is Account Temps. And they had a campaign they were running called Bob from Account Temps. And it was just a radio campaign that they had been running for like 15 years. And they were seeing diminishing returns on. And they had tried a number of times and couldn't get any traction from other executions that they tried to do. So they approached us, and we did some research, and we actually uncovered that people did have an affinity. Bob wasn't well known, but people who knew him loved him. So we were like, okay, let's see what we can do with this. And we created a series of videos and billboards and really kind of with great headlines that connected with people. There were, Bob's payroll reports are better than Bagel Monday, or nobody rocks a spreadsheet like Bob rocks a spreadsheet. We had videos that felt like little mini episodes of The Office with people.
Yes, I love it.
Telling stories about Bob. Bob was never present in these things. There was always someone talking about him. But that entertaining content, you could like literally sit through a really compelling 2 or 3 minute video online.
Yep.
And people would do. Our video completion rates were off the charts.
Yep.
We put that on social media. We saw a 1,700% lift in
Holy cow.
video.
That's incredible. It's funny you mentioned that, Adam, because back in May of this year, I interviewed Gary Vee for a virtual summit that we were doing. So I drove up to Chattanooga from Orlando, got to do an in-person interview with him. And one of the questions that I asked, I said, what's the biggest growth opportunity for B2B brands? And he told me, he said, it's basically creative that makes your ideal buyer laugh. And as I thought about it, he said, think about what Dollar Shave Club did. And if B2B brands started thinking like that, thinking about who their buyer is, even though they're not B2C, but thinking about who that buyer is, if you can make them laugh, if you can engage them with laughter, similar to what it sounds like you guys did with the Bob campaign, then they're going to actually want to consume the content, and they're going to see your message at the end of it, or they're going to associate that with your brand. And so I was driving back from that interview, and I had an idea that night, actually thinking about, okay, if our audience is B2B marketers, that's who we sell our service to. All of our audience, most of the people that make up B2B marketers, have at least heard of Gary Vaynerchuk. A lot of them love Gary Vee, and I'm obsessed with Gary Vee. And so I said, what if we did a funny video series that kind of poked fun at my obsession with Gary Vee? And so yesterday we actually launched this Gary Vee wannabe video series. We released episode 1 on LinkedIn, and the responses were phenomenal. It's produced, I think, 3 qualified leads for us. One is we've already got a sales call on the calendar, but it's the first type of marketing that I've done that is along the lines of what you guys did with Account Temps. And I just think it's so powerful that when you create creative that people actually want to consume, it doesn't feel like a commercial and have that negative connotation. People enjoy consuming it because you spent time in developing creative that your audience actually wants to consume. So I love the story of Account Tips of what you guys did there. Adam, is there anything else kind of around that idea that you think is important for the B2B marketers listening to this to understand?
Let me connect the dots for you on this, because the path to doing that, it's easy to say, you make something that's funny, but in order to really get people to engage, you need a formula to be able to do that.
Yeah.
On an ongoing basis. And the formula is to connect the dots between insight. Most marketers stop at positioning. Lenovo is one of our clients, B2B clients, who do their commercial marketing. These are people buying either servers or laptops by the hundreds or thousands, right?
Yep.
And, when we started working with them, we were doing work on the first assignment they gave us was to launch the Yoga Pro laptop.
Okay.
And, when we did quantitative research with their customers online, we found that, the unique perception of Lenovo in the marketplace was kind of around its durability for this product. It was about flexibility.
Okay.
Because it was a laptop that converted into a tablet type of thing. So our positioning statement, it was obviously flexible, surprisingly tough, right? That was the product story that we want to tell.
Yep.
And most marketers, I think, kind of stop there. And what we did was we also included in this survey, which went out to, I think, 300 respondents, some open-ended questions, right? So people could have responses. And our strategy team uncovered a trend of people, IT guys, telling war stories about their users. So we created a campaign called Users Happen.
I like where this is going.
We just had IT guys telling war stories about, people bumbling with their laptops.
Yep.
And, that became the kernel for, 2 years of ongoing creative that we produced and used that core insight. Some of the videos, kind of the first wave was around this Users Happen, but then we had I fixed it, you're welcome. We actually did a rap video, IT guys singing that, but did everything from, Users Happen survival guides, like PDFs that for lower funnel content that we had this really engaging, got an illustrator, did all these humorous illustrations that kind of had that style of an airplane, the guides that they put in the back with the exit, but funny illustrations, kind of bringing to life the strategic points about the product, and kind of coupled that with, everything from little, I fixed it, you're welcome coffee mugs.
I love
that you're welcome on the bottom, so
creating an entire sub brand around the campaign.
Yeah. Around that insight.
Yep. I love it.
It allowed, Lenovo to increase the engagement KPIs on average by about 300% over their benchmarks. In some instances, we had 400% lift over their previous benchmark KPIs for video completion rates. Then translated into a 250% lift in MQLs.
Wow. And that's what we care about, right?
Yeah.
I think it's easy to discount kind of the top of funnel, the brand awareness pieces like that, because it's easy to say, well, where's the ROI? Why should we be investing this heavily in things that aren't bottom of funnel that are turning into sales? That's what we're all after. But unless you understand that you've got to capture someone's attention, and the way to do that is exactly what you've just laid out. I mean, there's an art to figuring out how do we capture the attention of the exact people that we're trying to capture. And I love these stories that you're sharing. So one other thing that we talked about, Adam, you mentioned this idea of kind of what makes good creative. Based on what you just said, would you say that kind of the variable to good creative is the insight?
I mean, there's always the execution,
yep.
But I think that the foundation of good creative is the insight. It's making sure that there's something that's going to be that aha moment, that hidden truth, that kind of construct that lives in your prospect's brain. It's easier to, if there's something that lives in your prospect's brain, a thought, a construct, an idea, to take that and portray it in a slightly different way and leverage that to communicate your point than it is to build an idea up from scratch.
Got it. Are there any things that your team does, Adam, to kind of, as you're working with new clients, are there things that are helpful for you guys as you're digging into a new account and you're trying to figure out what these insights are? Any best practices or frameworks that you guys do to do that?
It really depends on the client and the opportunity. We've done, like I described, one research project that was more of an online focus. We look to always have a qualitative aspect to our research so that we can probe and kind of get that free-form response. Sometimes we've done things like conflict analysis groups for larger projects where we actually focus group two groups with different diametrically opposed views on something and then bring them together and watch the sparks fly, to doing things like online surveys. I think having that is important. I think it's also really important to have stakeholders throughout the organization have a voice in that. Another campaign that we just launched for a company called Virtue Stream, one of the executions, I forgot the exact copy line, but I remember us being in a stakeholder interview and the client, the head of sales, or one of the leading sales guys said, look, when, the apps that, they're a cloud services company that does enterprise cloud. It's like, when the apps that we run go down, airplanes fall out of the sky.
Oh, wow.
So we kind of like did creative that kind of brought that point to life, and like talked about mission critical as or when failure is just not an option.
Got it. I love it.
And, I think having people throughout the organization, from the CEO, particularly the sales team, because it's so important, just for the long-term success of a marketing program, for sales and marketing to feel like they're working together and not in silos.
Yeah, not bumping heads, but truly aligned.
One of the things we've done as an agency internally that makes us distinct, I think, is how we've kind of structured. We actually have our strategy team reports into our executive creative director, which is unique in an agency. Usually they're separate departments. What we've seen and what many clients have experienced is often you'll approve a strategy. It'll go off to the creative team who didn't really have ownership in creating that strategy, and it will not be reflected in the work.
But when the creative team has ownership of what the high level strategy is, they're much more, I would imagine the execution ends up coming out a lot cleaner. There's one other thing that we talked about offline, Adam, that I'd love to touch on with you before I let you go. It's this idea that you mentioned something about marketing automation not aligning with consumers. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. I think one of the challenges that marketers face is thinking too hard about kind of the KPIs that are associated with a marketing automation platform abstractly, instead of really asking what do they mean, and maybe redefining them or re-architecting them. For example, with a marketing automation platform, you're looking at how do I get something to go from, being a prospect to an MQL to a sales lead. And when you kind of think that way, that's very brand centric.
Yeah.
Right. And you wind up trying to, what we've seen is like just drive engagement for engagement's sake to boost up that score, rather than really think about like, okay, what is the customer's journey, right? Yeah. Have they identified a need within their organization? Are they in the research phase? Are they in the comparison phase? And if you think in terms of the customer, then you will, inherently make the right content.
Yeah.
And, I think one of the core things is often you'll have engagement drive to a site, and then you'll kind of have a lift in your MQLs, but they won't be converting. So you need to then analyze what is the content on these pages that we're missing to get, an MQL to become a sales lead. Yeah. And that question, it's not just about engagement at that point. It's not just about clicking on stuff and, ticking the boxes on your marketing automation platform. It's really about thinking about like, where is this customer in their journey, and how do we make sure that we're answering the questions that they have
at this stage?
At this stage.
Yeah, no, I love that. Adam, this has been fantastic. I want to close with one last question that I love asking, because it allows our listeners to get to know our guests on another level. So, Adam, what would you say is the legacy that you want to leave?
Traction made national news this summer when we introduced a policy called Days of Action, where we gave employees 2 days of paid leave per year to participate in democracy however they see fit.
Interesting.
And regardless of their political affiliation, we felt that, we're at a point in society where companies need to really kind of take on this notion of corporate responsibility to a greater degree. And we wound up getting pretty heavily trolled, and we were on Breitbart and Fox News. It was kind of a crazy thing.
Wow.
That literally dozens of stories about our little agency here. And, our mission here as an agency is to be a place where the experience getting there is as great as the work itself. And I think that really I want us, me and the founders who created this company, all, I believe, want to leave behind a company, not just an agency, but a company that fills that mission, that delivers great work and delivers a great experience to our team and to our employees, and does it, by breaking the mold and, in some cases, setting an example for others.
I love it. I love it, Adam. If there's somebody listening to this, they want to stay connected with you, they want to learn more about Traction, what's the best way for them to go about doing both of those things?
Our website is at tractionco.com, tractionco.com. And of course, you can contact us there. I'm available on LinkedIn and Twitter. I'm Adam Kleinberg on both. So pretty easy to find.
Love it. Love it. Awesome, Adam. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to going live with this.
Me too. I look forward to hearing it.
If you've been getting value from this podcast, you can help us reach more people by reviewing the show on iTunes. Here's how you can leave a review in less than a minute. Open your podcast app and tap the search icon in the bottom right corner. Type in B2B Growth, then select our show. Once you're there, tap the Reviews tab and tell us what you think of the show. These reviews help us out a ton.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.